Wouldn't it be cool if we could just have the computer take a laundry list of things to do and just do them one at a time until they were all done? Well, we can. In DOS, it's called a batch script. In Unix, it's called a shell script, or in Mac, it's called a shell script also. So let's build a simple batch script here that will allow us to render each one of these scene files all in just one go. I mean, as you can imagine, that could be very useful for something like rendering out frames in one script so that you had distinct individual frames in case you had a crash or something, and then invoking a second script to compile those output frames into a movie. I know a lot of people have been struggling with performance issues or crashes that have lost them a lot of time in terms of getting their comps done. Well, that's one way you could do it. You could write out all of the frames to EXR files or PNGs or something, and then just use another script to compile them into a movie. That way there's a lot less stress about your beauty render crashing in the middle and corrupting your output movie. So let's get started. It's usually best practice to start your script with some kind of comment. And in Unix, it's actually a requirement. But in a batch script in Windows, it isn't strictly speaking a requirement. It's just nice to tell people what you're doing. So I'm going to use the comment command in DOS, which is REM. And I'll just put a little note here at the top of the script to tell myself or anyone else who might look at this script later what I meant to do with this thing. So I'll just say render all these Nuke scripts. And remember, when we were working interactively in the command line, one of the first things we did is we jumped to the directory that we wanted to work from. So let's use that same strategy in our script here. We still have our shell pointing to that, so I'm going to just copy from the shell here that, and I'll go CD, and remember we use the flag to force it to jump to the device, so /D, CD to this path. The DOS key command that we used to create our alias equivalent doesn't work within a batch script, so we're going to use a different strategy here. We're going to use sort of a macro, or actually it's more like a variable that will expand, so kind of like a macro, but it'll work a little bit better than DOS key in here, since DOS key won't work at all. So what we're going to do is use the set command, and we will set this variable called NukeX to basically be the same as our macro that we created earlier in DOS key. So I'm just going to copy that from the stuff that we tested up here. And then paste that in. I omitted the little $* because we don't need that. We can expand things a little bit more easily inside of our script here. So now all we need to do is set up our commands in our little laundry list of things to do. To expand variables, which is what we've defined here instead of a macro, inside a batch script, you use the % and the name of the variable. And if you want it to be paranoid, you could, well, DOS is case insensitive, so it doesn't matter if it's capital or not, but it is sort of a convention in many programming languages like Bash to capitalize variables. We'll just leave this small for now, since in DOS it doesn't make any difference. So there we go. There's our command, and then we'll append the rest of the command to the end, just like we did in our workshopping that we did down here. So in the case of this one, we appended this stuff to get it to execute. So that was version 6. We'll just duplicate those for all the others. And the others don't have the right PNG, so let's take that out. We'll only write we'll write out all of the right nodes for all of the others. So I'm just going to copy and paste to duplicate this a few times. And we'll make this one 4, 3, 2, copy, and 1. And then once you have it done, you can save this to disk pretty much anywhere you want. I'm going to put one empty line on the end. That's sort of a best practice when scripting. And if you really want to be a perfectionist, you could put an exit down here, but it'll fall off the end of this command here and exit on its own. So that's not strictly speaking necessary. But this is ready to go. We now have our little to-do list for the computer to go through each one of these and execute all of these commands. Now I'm taking out this extra space, but that normally wouldn't matter. I'm just tidying it up. Let's save it to disk. I'm going to save it into the same place as all these scripts, but you could put it almost anywhere you like because it knows what to do. It knows where to go to get these because you've jumped into this directory before you start, and it knows where the nuke command is, so it should be able to execute from anywhere. So let's save it, save as, and we'll save it to the same place as our nuke scripts, and we'll call it render all .bat. There it is. To execute it, you could double click it because of the .bat extension. Windows knows that it's a script and it will execute it like a script, but I'm going to start another shell here. I'm holding down the Windows and R to get another command shell. Okay, there we go. And we can just drag it in there and hit enter. And away we go. So that was much better than having to load 6 scripts and hit the render button a bunch of times. As you can imagine, this could have been 1,000 nuke scripts, and it still would have just chewed through them one at a time until they were all done. Let's look at some even more advanced ways that we can use the command line and a little bit of modifications to the script in order to actually modify things within the script from outside on the command line.